Hello, this is Daniel Lanois, and these are records in my life.
Jolie, how do you do? Oh no, I'm a stranger in the eyes of the maker. So hard, work so hard.
Hey,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for coming on the airwaves to talk about my music.
Thank you so much for being on the show. How are you today, Daniel?
Everything's pretty good here in Toronto. I've had my workout, went for a walk. I'm working on my piano compositions, the usual busy bee.
So you're okay being in the winter of Toronto right now, because you're usually a Los Angeles fellow, aren't you?
Well, I've avoided the Toronto winter for a while now, by Los Angeles or otherwise. I usually work abroad somewhere, but it's fine. You know, it's if you're familiar with upstate New York winters, then it's kind of the same here. You know.
Well, thank you so much for being on Records in My Life. This show is about you and the music you've worked on. Tell us about your new record.
The new record is called Heavy Sun. I hooked up with some good mates in Los Angeles, Rocco DeLuca, good old friend Rocco, and Jim Wilson, and Johnny Shepard from Shreveport, Louisiana. And we decided to put a singing group together, write some new songs, and it has a little bit of gospel in its spine because Johnny's from the Zion Baptist Church in Shreveport, so he's our hymnologist, and so we thought we were in good company to make this record that has good harmony and nice messages, and hopefully bring a bit of joy to people's hearts.
Do you have a favorite track off the record, or one that you're most proud of?
Oh, I love all my children, but you know, there's a couple of harmony numbers there that are sweet. There's one called The 1,000-Year-Old Tree of Thule. The Tree of Thule is one that I like. And Tumbling Stone. I think they kind of get the point across.
Your album sounds like it's trying to send a good message out there. Some words of hope and to keep people put a good spirit out there. Was that one of the main motivations behind the album?
It just went that way. Johnny is also a minister, and so he said, well, as long as every song has a message, then I'm ready to sing outside of church. And so it was just something that it was a criteria that we were operating by, that we didn't want to be shadowed by any cynicism or to be occupying, taking the forefront. We didn't want the front of the picture to be wearing leather pants. We wanted to be congregation.
Fantastic. Now, I'd love to talk to you a bit about your production history as well, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's all fine. Whatever's good for the house is my latest motto. So
that's great.
It's your show, and I'm very, very happy to be invited. So I'll let you lead the way.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. I've been listening to your record since I'm sure you've heard this before from people, since I'm like 12 years old. I have great memories of listening to your records on in the CD loader and in the shopping mall parking lot, and all that stuff. But I wanted to ask you, when was that moment? I mean, when an album kind of just grabbed you, and it grabbed you sonically, or you were like, how did they make that sound? And you became enthralled and decided you wanted to produce records.
Well, I loved records since I was a child. How could we not? I got excited when I first heard "Wipeout" by the Surfaris, and when I heard "Sleepwalk" by Santo and Johnny. When I heard what was coming out of Detroit with Motown and all that great, really basically gospel music or gospel singers getting onto the the pop charts and how exciting that was. And then the coming of the psychedelic era, of course, as a guitar player, I love the coming of Jimi Hendrix, and to hear Foxy Lady in school, it made me want to leave school.
That's fantastic. Did you hear a lot of stuff off the radio, like the AM dials, when you were a kid?
Oh, absolutely, because we're just a little bit, we're on the Canadian side from Buffalo, and then not that far away from Detroit, so we got a lot of the U.S. airwaves, and it was a very, very fertile time for radio by Buffalo and Detroit, but also in Toronto. We had some very innovative disc jockeys that they had these late night shows, and they went into, I think it might have been a little bit driven by drugs, but they were very poetic, and and so we have fond memories of quite renegade radio, and for pop radio to have been where it was at that time, it was really something special. It was an education in itself.
And with your experience of working with the great Harold Budd and Brian Eno, what was your takeaway that you used on further recordings?
Well, when I worked with Eno and Harold Budd, at that time I was already involved with producing records in Canada, and I had made a lot of albums. But the coming of those fine young men, Eno and Harold Budd, it really stopped me in my tracks. It meant that we went fully into experimentation of sound for a good few years. I stopped doing everything else. I lived for that ambient music, and I was so grateful that Eno had come into my life, and experimentation just occupied all my time. So prior to that, I was busy doing a lot of different kind of records, but when I started working with Eno and Harold, I thought, I'll never look back. I will never do anything that I don't fully believe in from here on.
How did, just out of curiosity, how did you meet those fellas?
Eno heard some of my music in New York. These women from Toronto called the Time Twins, had a band called the Time Twins. They took their recordings to New York, met Eno, and he said, "Oh, these are great recordings. Where did you make these?" And my name came up, and that was it. He booked some time in my studio, came to Canada. I believe he was already coming to Toronto on some business. And so it was partly a matter of excitement from hearing the tape, but also a trip that he had already planned.
Now, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, and forgive me for asking this. I wanted to ask you. Oh, Mercy's fantastic. I wanted to ask you what was the experience like?
Well, next to James Brown, Bob Dylan's the hardest working man in show business. With the making of Oh Mercy, it was a very private setting. Imagine two guys, two chairs, two kitchen chairs, me and Bob, a Roland 808, which is a little beatbox, and our guitars, and off we went. The record was made in a kitchen area, and because we didn't have a large orchestra around Bob, I really got to focus on the center of that record, center being Bob's voice and his lyrics. And the record sounds that way. It's very intimate, and you can feel like you can touch the details. And it's largely we got to that largely from that approach, just really, really concentrating on the center. It became a very midnight record at a certain point. It's a very New Orleans sounding record. And Bob had a rule after a while. Says he says, Daniel, let's only work at night from here on, because he found that there was something creeping in from the midnight, and so we kept that going.
Interesting. Now I know, like your songs, the albums you produced, they're your babies as well. Do you have a record you're most proud of? In all your production work?
Well, I like something about everything I've worked on. I heard the Pearl, the Harold Budd, Brian Eno record a couple of months back. A friend of mine had it in my studio when I walked in. Had it on playing in my studio, and I walked in. I said, "Oh my goodness, it sounds so far out and great!" And it immediately transported me someplace. And so, isn't that the job of records? We hope to transport listeners to a place. So certainly the Pearl does that, and That was a surprise listen to Achtung Baby, the U2 record that I worked on with the fellas, partly done in Germany, in Berlin. And that record sounded great to me as well. So I stand by those two to name two.
We got maybe 2 more questions for you. Thank you very much for their fun questions to close out the show. Weed, wine, or water to listen to your favorite song or your favorite album, or to write?
And weed, water, and wine? Is that what you said? I hate to leave out all my children. I love them all.
Yeah,
well, I know. I guess we're allowed to say weed now because it's all legal.
Yes.
Well, you wouldn't need much more than water to be transported, hopefully transported by some of our best work. So I'm going to stick to water. I'll stay out of trouble.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. And what would you mentioned high school earlier. What would you consider the record of your high school years?
Well, I have to go back to Jimi Hendrix one more time. That's why I quit school when I heard Foxy Lady. And it was quite a reassurance because I already had my recording studio and I was questioning why I should be in school when I already had something happening that I loved. And so I want to thank Jimi Hendrix one more time for reminding me that rock and roll should be the guiding light.
Thank you. Fantastic. Hamilton Tiger Cats. Touchdown.
Hi, Daniel. I'm Mark. I'm the camera guy on the show. I just want to say hi. I'm a huge fan. Love the record you made. Love your own stuff. I play in a folk band called Farm Team, and we do 2 covers off your Acadie record. I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah,
Big
man.
blessing. Thank you for the music. Cheers.
I saw you lurking in the bushes. Thank you so much for saying hello.
He's a huge fan, by the way. He really, he's a producer extraordinaire, and he loves your.
Yeah.
We talk about your stuff all the time.
Well, you should have put him on and just get him wearing your glasses. I wouldn't have known the difference.
He's better looking than I am. Maybe a little smarter too, but we'll keep that. But thank you again, and best of luck with the new record. And it was a thrill to talk to you. Thanks again.
Okay, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mark Henning, the other half of Records in My Life. Love it that you made it to the end of the video. Please leave us a comment, leave us a thumbs up, and subscribe. If you really dug the show, we'd love it if you'd consider supporting us over at patreon.com/RIMLTV. Cheers and see you next week.